I met Eliza at a bookstore, cafe, an ironic place. Considering how many love stories end up shelved and unfinished, she had this glow about her, warm, curious, a little mysterious in a way that didn't feel guarded, just deliberate. We started talking about poetry, of all things. That conversation turned into coffee, which turned into long evening walks, which turned into something that felt like falling in love. We talked daily. She made me playlists. I made her laugh. We shared secrets you usually only say in the dark, lying beside someone who feels like home. She said she wasn't seeing anyone. Said she wanted something real. And so I believed her. How could I not? We planned trips, talked about what a future could look like, in that soft, hopeful way you do when it feels safe to dream. Then came the message. One of my co-workers, completely oblivious to my situation, forwarded me a wedding photo with the message, "Isn't this the woman you've been dating?" I remember staring at the screen for what felt like a full minute, my coffee going cold in my hand. There she was, Eliza, smiling, in a white dress, next to a man I'd never seen before. Married. Not recently. For 3 years. I didn't even know how to be angry at first. I was too busy unraveling everything I thought I knew. Had she lied every single time we were together? Or was I just some escape for her? The more I thought about it, the more I realized how many little red flags I'd ignored. The weekends she'd go visit her sister. The occasional silence during certain hours. The way she never let me take her picture. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She just said it wasn't supposed to happen like this. I didn't expect to feel anything real. I was silent. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I didn't know which pain to speak from: betrayal, heartbreak, or the part of me that still wanted to believe she loved me. I walked away. I had to. But the healing didn't come quickly. I second-guessed every moment, blamed myself for not seeing the signs sooner, hated how I missed her even after everything. But slowly, I started rebuilding myself, learning how to protect my heart without locking it away completely. Now, I know this. Love without truth is a slow poison. And no matter how real something feels, if it's built on a lie, it's not love, it's illusion. Eliza and I met in the most unassuming way, at a bookstore cafe tucked between the city's noise and quiet. It was one of those spots where time slowed down, a place for thoughtful people, or at least people pretending to be thoughtful. She was sitting alone, reading Neruda, a fact I found charming in a way that made me introduce myself without thinking twice. Our first conversation was light but deeply engaging. She was quick-witted, with eyes that carried stories she wasn't quite ready to share, and I was intrigued. There was no flirtation in the beginning, just a connection. The kind of rare, easy familiarity you don't often find with strangers. Over the next few weeks, we kept running into each other coincidentally at first, or so I thought. One day, she left a sticky note inside a book I was browsing. "You again? Coffee sometime?" That was the start of what I thought would be the most honest relationship I'd ever experienced. We met for that coffee. Then another. Then dinner. Before I realized it, we had slipped into a rhythm. There wasn't a formal moment of defining what we were. but everything about how we interacted felt exclusive, intentional, and sincere. She'd touch my hand when we spoke, remember the smallest things I said, and send texts at midnight just to say she missed me. We weren't just physically present in each other's lives, we were emotionally entwined. She was vulnerable in ways that felt real. She shared stories of her childhood, of a strained relationship with her father, of failed relationships that had left her guarded but hopeful. She said she hadn't loved in a long time, that she'd closed herself off, and somehow, with me, she felt like she could open up again. I felt chosen. I felt like I was helping her heal, like we were creating something rare and valuable together. I was careful with her heart because I believed she was trusting me with it. We talked about dreams moving to a quieter city, starting fresh, escaping the cycle of modern dating and loneliness. She liked the idea of a cabin near the woods. I imagined us there, cooking together, reading by a fire. It felt like we were building a soft little future with our words and our presence. She never once said she was married. In fact, she went out of her way to emphasize how difficult dating had been, how she'd been avoiding commitment until now. It was those kinds of conversations that made me feel safe investing in her emotionally. When someone says they've been closed off and you're the one they finally let in, it gives you this irrational sense of responsibility, like you're protecting something sacred. I felt that deeply. There were small details I now realize I overlooked. She never invited me to her place, said it was messy, or her roommates were around, or she just preferred being out in the world with me. She never stayed over, citing early mornings, work, or needing time to herself. I didn't question it. Everyone has boundaries. I respected them because she seemed so emotionally transparent in every other way. I thought we were building something slowly, intentionally. In truth, I was being managed, kept within the lines of what her life allowed, without realizing I was part of the hidden world she controlled. We texted constantly, long stretches of conversation that weren't just flirty or shallow. We shared playlists, books, and sometimes full-blown monologues about life and loss. One night, she told me she believed in soul connections, but had stopped believing she'd find hers until recently. I remember sitting in my car after that call, stunned, silent, feeling like I had just been handed someone's heart. Every time we met, it felt layered with emotion, not just lust or curiosity, but something deeper. She held eye contact a beat longer than most people do. She would say things like, "You feel like home," in passing, without drama, but with weight. It wasn't just what she said, it was how she said it, with a kind of calm certainty that made you feel you were exactly where you were meant to be. I had no reason to suspect anything. No part of our connection felt performative. If anything, it felt emotionally intense, almost too intimate at times. But I was all in. I'd stopped talking to other people. I'd pulled away from dating apps. I was already introducing her name into stories with friends, already testing how it felt to say we instead of I. I believed she was mine heir, on her way to being, and I was hers. Completely, openly, without hesitation. The revelation didn't come with a dramatic confrontation or a slip of the tongue. It came casually, cruelly, from someone who had no idea they were detonating my entire understanding of the woman I loved. One of my co-workers sent me a wedding photo, attached to a message that simply read, "Isn't this the woman you're seeing?" I remember opening it slowly, thinking it must be some kind of misunderstanding. But there she was, Eliza, standing beside a man in a tailored navy blue suit, holding a bouquet, looking happier than I had ever seen her, and certainly happier than she ever looked with me. For a few seconds, my brain refused to process the image. I stared at the photo, zoomed in, zoomed out, convinced it was someone who looked like her. The resemblance was uncanny. It had to be an old photo. Maybe from years ago. Maybe she was divorced now. But no. The timestamp in the article was a community newsletter made it clear. The wedding was 3 years ago. This wasn't ancient history. This wasn't something she had moved on from. She was actively married. While she was falling asleep on the phone with me. While she was sending me love songs. While she was telling me she hadn't felt this close to anyone in years. My chest tightened in a way that made it hard to breathe. There was no anger at first, just numb confusion. My heart and my brain were fighting to interpret what this meant, to locate the truth within the emotional reality I had been living. I scrolled through our messages, searching for signs. Had she ever slipped? Had she ever hinted at another life? I thought of every excuse she gave when she couldn't meet, every boundary she had set under the guise of needing space, and suddenly, all those small justifications I had brushed off came crashing back with new, devastating meaning. The emotional betrayal was layered. It wasn't just the lie, it was how convincingly she had performed honesty. She cried in front of me. She told me things that made her vulnerable. She asked me to be patient while she figured herself out. She told me she was scared of getting hurt again. The depth of the manipulation wasn't in what she said, it was in how real it all felt. That's what shattered me. Not just the betrayal, but the intimacy she had weaponized. She didn't keep me at arm's length. She let me in and made it feel sacred, while all along she had another life I was never supposed to touch. The night I confronted her, I felt my stomach twisting in knots. I didn't want to believe what I'd seen. Part of me still hoped she had an explanation. Maybe she was separated. Maybe she had left him and hadn't told me yet. But as soon as she picked up the phone, I knew. Her silence, when I asked, "Are you married?" told me everything. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She just said, "I didn't plan for this to happen." That was her explanation. Like I had been some detour she hadn't expected to take. I asked her if he knew. Of course he didn't. She said he travelled often, and their relationship had become more like a business arrangement than a marriage. "We're not really in love anymore," she said, as if that was supposed to make the situation feel more forgivable. But love or not, commitment is commitment. Vows are vows. And I had been the unknowing third party in a betrayal I would never have agreed to be part of. The hardest part was the emotional conflict inside me. I hated her for what she had done. But I also loved her. Or at least, I had loved the version of her she gave me. My anger couldn't erase the tenderness I still felt. I replayed our moments together, her head on my chest, the softness in her voice when she said good night, every memory now felt like a trick. I started questioning myself more than her. Was I stupid for not seeing it? Did I miss the obvious signs? Was I so eager to believe in love that I ignored reality? That week, I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, reliving everything. I didn't just feel betrayed, I felt humiliated. She had created a version of reality that I had bought into completely. And now, I was left picking up the pieces of a truth that had never actually existed. I had to face that I was in love with someone who was never truly available to me. That every "I miss you," every whispered promise, every moment of closeness was tainted. Not because she didn't feel something for me, but because she allowed that something to grow while rooted in deception. Even after all of it, I wanted to see her again. That's the messed up part. I wanted answers, closure, maybe even some false hope that she'd leave him and choose me. But I knew deep down that if she could lie once, she could lie again. Trust was no longer something I could give her, no matter how much I still wanted to. And that internal conflict, at war between anger and love, was the most painful part of all. After confronting Eliza and hearing her weak, emotionless explanation, I ended the call without saying goodbye. There was nothing left to say, at least not in that moment. I stared at my phone, still in disbelief that everything I had invested in emotionally, mentally, even spiritually, had been built on a foundation of deception. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I just sat in silence, completely hollowed out. It was a strange feeling, not heartbreak in the traditional sense, but something colder, deeper, like being emotionally amputated. There was no closure, just the sharp awareness that something important had died inside me, and it hadn't been mine to begin with. The days that followed were disorienting. I felt like I was walking through fog. I went to work, responded to emails, smiled when necessary, but I was on autopilot. Every time I had a free moment, my mind would wander back to her, to us, except now. Us had become a lie, a fabrication I was complicit in without even knowing. I deleted our photos, but not all at once. I couldn't bring myself to wipe everything clean right away. Some pictures I stared at for minutes, trying to understand how someone who looked at me like that could also be living another life. There were too many contradictions I couldn't reconcile. I didn't block her immediately. Part of me wanted to leave the door open for an apology, an explanation, or maybe even just acknowledgement of the damage done. But she didn't reach out. Not the days. And when she finally did, it wasn't remorseful. She texted, "I didn't mean to hurt you. I truly cared about you. But my life is complicated." That was it. No accountability. No real emotion. Just a vague, deflective statement that did nothing but deepen the wound. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The healing process was messy and slow. I had to unlearn the instinct to reach for my phone when something good happened. I had to stop myself from imagining her reaction to things. She had been integrated into so many parts of my daily routine that detaching from her felt like a withdrawal. I felt phantom aches, those emotional echoes that linger after someone's gone, even when you know they shouldn't return. Friends tried to help, offering advice, trying to distract me, encouraging me to move on, but I wasn't ready to hear any of it. I wasn't ready to let go of the fantasy. Not yet. What complicated everything even further was the fact that my feelings didn't just vanish. I hated what she did, but I still missed her. There were nights I almost called her, just to hear her voice. I would type long messages and delete them before sending. I wasn't looking for reconciliation, I was looking for closure. She was never going to give me. I wanted her to say sorry and mean it. I wanted her to tell me that what we had mattered. But even if she had, would it have changed anything? Probably not. The damage was already done. The foundation had already crumbled. But the emotional grip she had on me didn't disappear just because the truth came out. I started therapy 2 months later. Not because of her specifically, but because I couldn't trust my own judgment anymore. I needed to understand why I had fallen so hard, so fast, and why I had ignored all the signs. My therapist helped me realize that I had projected a lot onto her, my desire for connection, stability, emotional safety, and that in doing so, I ignored my intuition. I wasn't just mourning the loss of a person. I was mourning the version of myself that believed I had finally found something real. It took a long time to rebuild trust in myself, let alone in anyone else. I became more guarded, not in a bitter way, but in a protective one. I stopped romanticizing vulnerability without consistency. I paid attention to patterns instead of words, and I learned how to sit with discomfort instead of rushing to fill it with someone else's presence. The emotional scar Eliza left didn't fade easily, but it did become something I could carry without it breaking me. I still think about her sometimes, not with longing, but with a strange detachment, like remembering a dream that once felt real, but now sits far away from your current self. I don't hate her. I don't wish her well, either. She became a chapter I wouldn't have chosen, but one that taught me more than any comfortable relationship ever could. I learned that love isn't just about how someone makes you feel, it's about how they show up, consistently, honestly, even when it's inconvenient. And more than anything, I learned that healing isn't about forgetting someone, it's about remembering who you were before them, and slowly, patiently returning to that person with a little more wisdom in your heart.